Serious Sam used to be a guilty pleasure of mine. It's one of those games where you mostly turn off your brain and just shoot hordes of monsters with exotic fantasy weapons. I remember when they released Serious Sam 3 and I started it. It felt different. Something wasn't right. Why did I have such normal military shooter type guns? A Desert Eagle, an assault rifle, reloading? Not to mention that the first few levels were effectively within a Middle Eastern city ravaged by war. This felt very inappropriate and like a total deviation from what I had expected. I mean, one of the missions was to find gasoline for a car and refuel it. Luckily, this weirdness didn't last very long, and a few levels in, we got the huge open spaces with tons of monsters and futuristic weapons again. The military shooter nonsense was a distant memory at that point. And this is where you're probably wondering why I'm talking about Serious Sam 3 when this is supposed to be a review of Serious Sam 4. The reason for that is that after I had completed the third game, I actually found an article on the internet talking about how the developer had lost a contract for a military shooter. They had been pretty far with the development as well, so clearly all those assets that were already prepared for this other game were now wasted, right? Well, guess where they decided to recycle them? That's right, in Serious Sam 3. And unfortunately, it seems that they more or less did the same thing with the fourth game, but it's actually worse this time around. However, let's approach it all one step at a time. As is tradition on this channel, I will first address the Ultrawide Support. I'm happy to report that the game supports both 21:9 and 32:9 without any issues. Well, that may not be exactly true. You see, games optimize so poorly, it offers large maps which are incredibly hardware hungry. So unless you have a beast of a computer, you will see some pretty serious dips in your frame rate when you switch to higher resolutions, which are usually the resolutions that you're going to be using when playing Ultrawide. The game is as optimized as riding a pig instead of a horse would be. I mean, you could technically do it, but will it really be a good ride? I don't think so, and neither is the optimization of this game. And I can't help but start this review with the game's story. The reason being that I was unsure if the developer's intentions were serious or actually not when it came to it. You see, normally the Serious Sam games are not taking themselves very seriously. Ironic because of the name, right? They tell a lot of immature jokes and generally have this goofy attitude, starting with our protagonist Sam Stone. In this game, the goofiness is still here. However, there is a deeper story and a supporting cast of characters which the developers really wanted us to care for, and I was actually unsure if this was some sort of a joke which was supposed to be revealed later on or not, because of how bad this serious attempt was, but it really looked serious. And as it turns out, some aspects of the story are to be taken seriously, and this is also where it all fails miserably. You see, mixing a bunch of goofy characters in with some serious moments is nearly impossible to pull off, even for experienced and good authors, I mean. Needless to say, Crow Team are not even close to being experienced or good authors. So here's the gist of it. Earth is swarmed by monsters who want to take over. They have a leader, humanity is being enslaved, and Sam is part of a special military unit which was assembled in order to fight this alien invasion. He has several experienced squad mates who he has known for a long time and even has lots of war stories with, although we as the player have never seen any of them before, neither in past games nor in anything else really, but apparently they've known each other a very long time. I like how they changed his appearance, by the way. His new look seems to be a bit more fitting with his voice, so that's an improvement. The issue with this game is that it tries to introduce a more serious tone here. I know I've mentioned this a few times, but I have to really emphasize. The invasion has devastated the world, and we start the game in a city similarly to how we did in the previous installment of the series. And again, the city proves to be a terrible battleground for the gameplay that we are used to. While Sam is still fast, he's yet again limited to only standard grade military weapons, which need to be reloaded, for example. The arenas are limited substantially due to the fact that this is a city. It's not just a giant canyon or something, which also means there are a lot less monsters on the screen to kill. In short, you start with weapons that are neither appropriate for the game nor fun to play with, and also fight in arenas which are yet again not appropriate and limit the amount of enemies you can face. And these are the cornerstones of this franchise, getting cool weapons and jibbing a bunch of enemies, like huge amounts of them simultaneously. This also means that in order to achieve a larger enemy count, they have to resort to waves. So you kill a few guys, then more spawn in, you kill those, and then another wave spawn in, but it's always small squads that charge you, which is just really weird for this game. This really sucks and makes the battles more tedious than fun. There's still lots of secrets to find, but overall the city levels are not fun at all, at least for me. From time to time you will find a skill orb, and since I've mentioned the skills, you can invest those skills into one of your perks. Luckily, some of the perks are actually quite nice. My favorite ones being the ones that allow you to dual wield weapons. That's kind of fun and it kind of fits with the game's overall tone. You also have side quests, which are simply small deviations from the normal path. You do them and are rewarded some nice gear, including special doomsday devices, which have really nice effects. My favorite being the mini nuke and black hole, which both clear the whole screen. This time around, we have a lot more cutscenes and voice dialogues, which are fun to watch overall when they're not, again, trying to be serious, but when they do try to be, it's very cringy and cannot be taken seriously by the player. It really feels out of place and it's done poorly. The maps also offer vehicles, which brings some variety to the monotone gameplay. Something that I found annoying was the fact that our character loses all of his weapons on several occasions when the story demands it, and we have to start collecting them again. This is all due to the fact that Serious Sam 4 actually wants to tell a deeper and more serious story, and it borrows ideas from other military shooters where your character gets captured or is injured or something happens, you lose your loadout. At this point, I have to say that I'm glad that they lost whatever contract they had for an actual military shooter, because it is painfully obvious that they would have botched that job for sure. With many cutscenes and a deeper emphasis on story, lots of issues become obvious, issues which would otherwise not be noticed by the player. The annoying characters, the terrible story writing, the bad animations, it's all here. Take your pick. As I was playing the game, I was reminded of another bad game called Right to Hell Retribution. You can check my review of this gem on the channel if you feel like it. It's a bad game. Serious Sam 4 costs €40 and I feel like that's asking too much. The first two Serious Sam games had smaller budgets, had a lower price tag, and offered a better setting with lots of crazy levels. 3 was a step back, but at least the second half of the game returned to its original roots and presented more fun levels to play on. Unfortunately, Serious Sam 4 starts basically like its predecessor, but never returns to its roots at all. It focuses on everything that made Serious Sam 3 bad and adds bad story, which takes itself seriously on top of that. My disappointment is immeasurable and my day is ruined. I played this game to its conclusion because I wanted to be sure. I wanted to make certain that there is not a single level that is good. And ironically, I found one that right at the end actually gets pretty good, where you get swarmed by hundreds of enemies in a vast open space. You have all the fun guns and it's actually quite entertaining to jib them all, but it's too little too late. Serious Sam 4 is what you get when you try to bite off more than you can chew. I understand Crow Team. They have a small Slavic studio which is getting exhausted from making the same simplistic game over and over again. They probably look over yonder and see CD Projekt Red, who, just like them, started with a super low budget game and made it big by trying to build upon it. The jump from The Witcher 2 to The Witcher 3 was huge. They risked a lot and created a massive game with both deeper story and much more complex gameplay. If I had a small studio, this would be both an example and a target for me as well. But the problem here is that The Witcher 2 was a fairly large step forward when compared to The Witcher 1, whereas here, Serious Sam 3 was a step down from Serious Sam 2, except for the graphics, I guess, but you know, yes, they were better, but pretty much everything else was not. So should you play this game? The short answer is clearly no. You should not even consider this game if you've enjoyed previous installments of the series. The only people who should consider this game are those who have played Serious Sam 3 and actually thought that the first urban areas where you use an assault rifle, a sledgehammer, and a pistol were the best part of the game. If there are such people, please leave me a comment. You are unicorns and I want to study you and extract the ability to enjoy bad gameplay as much as you do. To everyone else who was not gifted with the skill to enjoy bad games, don't waste your money on Serious Sam 4. There are many things that are more fun to do than play this, like watching paint dry, for example. Anyway, this was my review of Serious Sam 4. Thank you for watching and have a great day.